Hi, I'm Matt Elmore. I'm an assistant extension specialist at Rutgers University, focusing in turfgrass weed science. So what this picture is a fairway full of goosegrass in the state of New Jersey, and unfortunately this is really becoming an all too common occurrence. This weed seems like it's gotten especially bad over the last 5 to 10 years, so my project's been doing some work to try to learn a little bit more about why that may be. So again, this is a common sight across the mid-Atlantic up into New Jersey, and even moving farther north is this fairway which is inundated with goosegrass, and the goosegrass in this picture appears white because it's been treated with Pylex herbicide that causes this bleaching symptomology, and in this case it really highlights the severity of the infestation. So we've been doing some work back to 2018 trying to understand a little bit more about how well these our common pre-emergence herbicides are working to control this weed. So this was from a golf course, and pre-emergence treatments were applied in early May before goosegrass emerged in 2018, and then evaluated until the end of the summer. So what you see in this image is two plots that look nearly identical in that they're completely covered in goosegrass. The plot on the right was treated with dithiopyr at 0.5 pound per acre. Plots treated with prodiamine in this experiment performed similarly, had similar results. And the interesting thing was that plots treated with oxidizon, which is a pre-emergence herbicide with a different mode of action, had almost no goosegrass. So that's a little bit concerning when one herbicide with a different mode of action performs completely different from herbicides like dithiopyr and prodiamine that should be expected to provide a moderate to good level of control. So we took the seed from that population and another golf course population into the lab and compared them to a susceptible population. And so what you see here are two Petri plates, each filled with a gel that's spiked with dithiopyr herbicide. And on the left, you have seeds that were planted to the gel of a susceptible population. You can see there. And the same thing was done in the Petri plate on the right. So the difference is that the seeds on the left germinated but did not develop. The root and shoot tissue were completely inhibited by the herbicide. And on the right, the seeds germinated and developed almost normally despite the presence of dithiopyr herbicide. So this suggests and this indicates that this population, as well as another one we tested, are resistant to dithiopyr. Some more work in the greenhouse, trying to understand the level or the factor of resistance. How resistant are these? Pots were seeded with goosegrass and then treated with varying rates of dithiopyr. On the top, you have the response of the resistant population, and on the bottom, you have the response of the susceptible population. And the rates of dithiopyr there at each pot, both above and below the rate, were subjected to, both for the resistant and the susceptible. Rates range from 0.01 pounds per acre of dithiopyr to 0.9 pounds per acre. A typical field application rate of dithiopyr is going to be anywhere from 1/4 to 0.5 pound per acre. So what you see there is that at the 0.45 pounds per acre rate, so this is at the upper end of what you might apply, the resistant population is hardly affected, and the susceptible population is completely controlled. So again, comparing the 0.9 pound per acre rate and the 0.04 pound per acre rate of the susceptible population, that kind of gives you an idea of the amount of resistance we're seeing. Because the thing to keep in mind is that when you apply dithiopyr, for example, say you apply 0.5 pound, maybe a couple weeks before goosegrass germinates, as you go through the summer, the amount of dithiopyr in the soil slowly dissipates. So the amount that plants, for example, goosegrass plants germinating in say June or late June, the amount of herbicide that's in the soil at that point is going to be considerably lower than what you applied. So these herbicides, for them to be effective in the field, would need to be effective in the greenhouse, at much lower rates than applied. So what you see on the bottom is what you would want to see for an herbicide that's going to be effective. So again, a pretty high level of resistance here with dithiopyr. So how much of a problem or how widespread is this problem across the state? That was what we wanted to learn a little bit more about, because we had done work on 2 golf courses and both of those ended up being resistant. But again, those were courses with pretty severe infestations. But we found lots of other golf courses with severe infestations across New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and we collected seed from or plants from those populations and grew them to seed in the greenhouse in 2019. And of the 23 populations we collected, and these were from sports fields and golf courses with that were battling goosegrass pretty heavily, so infestations were relatively severe, and they had used pre-emergence herbicides that year and in the past. And so we screened those, and we found a surprisingly high number. 17 of those 23 populations have some level of resistance to dithiopyr, and so that is a little bit concerning, as we look to other options. So with that in mind, thinking about rotating pre-emergence herbicides is important. Rotating away from dithiopyr to a different mode of action, such as oxidizon. The other component that's important, and we've been doing some work to develop an emergence model, is that the pre-emergence herbicides, of course, need to be applied before goosegrass germinates. And so what we found is that goosegrass typically germinates around mid-May, and it is essentially a function of a rolling accumulation of growing degree days, and we're trying to put some numbers on that to assign a model to it. But I think in general the thing to keep in mind is that even though we don't typically see goosegrass become problematic until mid-July, those seeds are actually germinating in mid-May, so those pre-emergence herbicides for goosegrass need to be out before the middle of the month typically, but it does definitely depend on air temperatures and soil temps. So, to conclude, we want to understand that resistance is certainly a problem in the state of New Jersey with pre-emergence herbicides. We've got some excellent post-emergence herbicide chemistries, and particularly in Pramazone, which is Pilex, and Phenoxaprop, which is Acclaim and also Last Call. But those are only 2 modes of action in the post-emergence category as well. So we really need to be mindful of resistance management, because this weed has shown us now in cool season turfgrass that it can evolve this resistance.